Check out Half the Battle, a channel with fight picks, betting tips, and interviews where fighters take part in making predictions too. Give them a subscription and be sure to let them know I sent you.
Okay, hang on. For luck.
When Max Holloway first began his career in the UFC, he had a lot of hype surrounding him. In fact, he was often compared to Anthony Pettis and was even brought in by Jeremy Stephens to mimic his style. Interesting how we've made it to this point. Now, there may be some that take issue with Pettis fighting for an interim title, but under the circumstances, I like it. I think it's a great styles matchup. When watching Holloway's debut UFC performances, I didn't quite get the Pettis vibe as much as I currently do. He stood orthodox, and he had a very active jab, whereas recent performances show him southpaw stance and a less active jab. Max's jab became less active, it seems, after the Andre Fili fight. And there could be many reasons that contribute to this, but perhaps fighters were just looking to counter off it in close distance whenever they could. Max still uses a jab, but just not as frequently as he had in past fights, which could always change. Speaking of change, we also saw Max begin to play with the southpaw stance much more in the Clay Collard fight, and I'm sure this was something he was doing in camp for some time, but began stress testing it in the UFC. There are a few techniques Max uses consistently that I like. Lead hooks, from orthodox or southpaw to the body or the head, as an attack or counter. Max times his lead hook very well. We most often see it as a check hook or to the body, but he implements it in many ways. Second is his turning sidekick. This has been in his arsenal since his early UFC career. Once again, I'll mention his jab too. Although he isn't as active as he was with it in the Pat Schilling fight, it still was a very dominant weapon in his arsenal. Without a good setup, many strikes will be telegraphed, and Max's jab stifles, it confuses, but most importantly, it sets up. Of course, there are many things that make Max a very well-rounded striker, such as excellent footwork, which is of course the main key to successful offensive and defensive striking, his knees in the clinch, dynamic kicks and flying knees. From what I've seen, there's not really one particular spot Max is deficient in. Perhaps the striking defense may not be as good from southpaw and he's susceptible to fighters who can close distance quickly and mix up their attacks well, but what fighter isn't? Pressuring Holloway and mixing up the attack has proven to be the best way to shut down Max's stand-up. Dennis Bermudez, Leonard Garcia, Conor McGregor, and Andre Fili are just a few fighters who had success striking with Max. And this is through pressure and mixing up shot selection. Cub Swanson is a fighter who mixes it up, and he has good footwork, so why wasn't he successful? Well, Max has excellent anticipation and timing, intelligently attacking first before Cub could get anything off, essentially stuffing his offense. The other way to stop him is to negate the range and take him down. His UFC debut was against Dustin Poirier. This is exactly what Dustin did when his range presented a problem. Dustin got deep in on the hips, secured a double leg, passed a mount, and began isolating an arm for the armbar. He transitioned to a mounted triangle and got the tap on the armbar, one of Dustin's best finishes, but this was Holloway's debut over 4 years ago. Dennis Bermudez would try for a head outside single leg, and Max answered with the submission threat. The second time he would try for it, Max would again go for the front headlock position. Bermudez would single leg dump. Max posts, keeps the head control, gets up, continues the guillotine threat, and then abandons and crossfaces, and transitions to the overhook while controlling Dennis's wrist. He lowers his hips, attacks, and escapes. We see this step-by-step takedown defense perfectly executed by Holloway in this fight. Even in the body lock against Dennis, Max was controlling the head, pushing up on the chin, overhook, wrist control, and escape. The first successful takedown Dennis had was the slam that took away the post, and then he secured position on top. This time around, Max was all about positioning and controlling the wrist. Much improved from Max. Dennis would get a few more takedowns, a driving single leg, and a few trips. This combined with heavy top control from him would win Dennis Bermudez a split decision. Interestingly enough, the next fight Max would get held down in was against Conor McGregor. And as is the case with most of Conor's fights, Max stepped in for an injured Andy Ogle about a month out from the event. This was a bizarre fight because both would get leg injuries during the bout. Max claims he injured his leg the first 30 seconds of the fight, but it actually occurred with about 1 minute and 50 seconds left in the first round, or at least we visibly see Max react after he kicks McGregor. Still, prior to this, Conor was doing very well timing his shots, cutting off the cage, pressuring and corralling Max. Obviously, Conor's reach was giving Max a lot of difficulties too. He would catch a kick and work from Max's guard near the end of the second round. Conor's knee visibly seems unstable about 20 seconds into the third round off a hopping front kick, and he immediately shoots in for a takedown. He was able to pass Max's guard and secure mount twice. Definitely not either of their finest performances, although the first round was interesting. I still take away that pressure and timing works well against Max, and obviously, even Conor was able to grapple with Max on the mat. He would lose that fight by decision. After that, Will Chope couldn't take him down. Andre Fili gave Max hell of a fight, another one to mix it up very well, but Max's pressure and strikes made him shoot in the third round. Max won via brutal submission. Max was taken down a few times in this fight too. Clay Collard would get one trip, not really a takedown on Max, but otherwise all unsuccessful takedown attempts. Akira Corsani wouldn't go for any, Cole Miller couldn't get any, Cub Swanson couldn't do it, Charles Oliveira wasn't able to, Jeremy Stephens would try for 12 takedowns and not get a single one, and Ricardo Lamas would try for 6 and not get any either. Since his loss to Conor McGregor, Max Holloway would successfully defend 47 of 51, or 92% of takedown attempts tried on him. The reason I mention all this is because I had a curious idea. Anthony Pettis may struggle defensively against wrestlers, but against someone like Holloway, he could get the better of him offensively. He did get in on the hips of Barboza, and also, Pettis trains with one of the best wrestlers in MMA, Ben Askren. Not to say Pettis will go out to wrestle Holloway, but I do wonder how their wrestling and jiu-jitsu stacks up to each other. I do think Pettis would have the edge, and based on never losing by submission, winning 9 times by submission while also having a brown belt, I see little reason to doubt that. Max may have only lost once by submission, but he still had his guard pass easily and against different styles of opponents. Max has a couple submission victories and is pretty slick on the mat, but we have to keep in mind he's still very young and he's a blue belt. Of course, a submission victory all hinges on the style of game plan both of them bring, but I do think we're going to see Pettis bring this fight to the mat. There's no question Anthony does prefer to strike and put on a show. He's more of a counter striker and doesn't often pressure. He usually looks for the counter right hand or doubling the jab and following with the right. Fairly basic, but it's when he stands southpaw and starts throwing kicks that makes him most dangerous. We've seen this many times, his crippling kicks to the head and body, programming his opponents, varying his speeds, and virtually no telegraphing. Without a doubt, when given time and space, Pettis will instill bad habits. Definitely my favorite moves from Pettis would be his body kicks from southpaw. They snap with such ferocity and almost always hit the target. Obviously that makes his opponent second guess if it's going to the head or body when he throws it again. No one is safe from these kicks, and neither is Max Holloway. His straight punches are noteworthy too, whether it's from southpaw or orthodox. They are sniping shots down the middle, and when he follows up with the aforementioned untelegraphed kick, it's a death recipe. This will be an interesting fight with interesting dynamics for sure. I think the most likely outcome is by decision. Pettis has never been stopped, and Max has lost by submission once, but never TKO'd. Pettis has been to decision 8 times and Max has been 10 times, plus it's a featherweight bout between 2 lightweight fighters basically. Max is primarily a featherweight, but he started his career at lightweight, had a catchweight bout against Clay Collard at 149 pounds, and he talks about how he's growing and will likely go up in weight anyways. Featherweight and lightweight fights often go to decision. Max's output in fights that go 3 rounds or above is on average quite higher than Pettis's. Also, Max leads the dance and pressures more often than Pettis does, so I'm sure he'll be the one setting the pace. I see Max landing shots, stepping in and out of range, anticipating Anthony's attack, and upsetting it with strikes. I'm sure Pettis will certainly have his successes on the feet and countering Max, but I think overall we're going to see Max steal rounds with pressure and output, kind of a blend of Edson Barboza and Rafael dos Anjos performances. However, Pettis does have a good finishing rate, which is why I have a hunch he would be the one to stop this fight. As I said previously, it really depends on the approach Pettis takes, but I do see that being the next likely outcome, Anthony Pettis by submission. Anthony has 7 victories by submission under the Zuffa banner. Whether it's Max trying to capitalize on taking Pettis down like others have, or Pettis finding a way to get Max down, I just think we're going to see this fight hit the mat sooner or later. I definitely give Pettis the edge in grappling. I'm sure some of you are looking at Max to get this by KO or TKO too. Considering the damage Pettis took against RDA, the fact he's cutting to get to featherweight, the volume of strikes Max outputs each round over the course of 25 minutes, the outcome is certainly likely, especially in later rounds. And of course there's the submission possibility if he hurts Pettis enough and can capitalize on the mat, but just in my opinion, I don't see it going down like that. I do think it's a little more likely that Pettis gets a TKO victory than Max. Although he outputs less, his strikes seem a bit more damaging. Plus, the way Pettis is able to deliver those kicks is scary. My personal pick is Max Holloway to win by decision, but I'm also keeping my eye on Pettis by submission. Anthony said this second weight cut is going much better for him, and I'm sure it will still suck, but I do think we'll see a better performance out of him. His featherweight debut against Charles Oliveira, he looked a little slow, but he still dominated him. UFC 206 is going down December 10th, and if you're purchasing the pay-per-view, please consider using the affiliate link in the description. It's no extra cost and you're supporting the channel by doing it. For further details and analysis on this fight, you can also visit rapidmma.com, the link is below. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more UFC 206 fight studies.